of the calculus. 20. Treatise on the arithmetical triangle. Pascal's triangle. Each number is the sum of the two directly above it. The triangle demonstrates many mathematical properties in addition to showing binomial coefficients. Pascal's trait du triangle arithmétique, written in 1654 but published posthumously in 1665, described a convenient tabular presentation for binomial coefficients which he called the arithmetical triangle, but is now called Pascal's triangle. 21. 22. The triangle can also be represented 0 1 2 3 4 5 6 0 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 2 3 4 5 6 2 1 3 6 1 0 1 5 3 1 4 1 0 2 0 4 1 5 1 5 5 1 6 6 1. He defined the numbers in the triangle by recursion. Call the number in the m plus 1 th row and n plus 1 column tmn. Then tmn equals tm1n plus tmn1, for m equals 0, 1, 2, and n equals 0, 1, 2. The boundary conditions are at m1 equals 0, t1n equals 0 for m equals 1, 2, 3, and n equals 1, 2, 3. The generator t00 equals 1. Pascal concluded with the proof. In the same treatise, Pascal gave an explicit statement of the principle of mathematical induction. 21. In 1654, he proved Pascal's identity relating the sums of the pth powers of the first n positive integers for p equals 0, 1, 2, k. 23. That same year, Pascal had a religious experience, and mostly gave up work in mathematics. Cycloid. Pascal studying the cycloid by Augustin Pajou, 1785 Louvre in 1658, Pascal, while suffering from a toothache, began considering several problems concerning the cycloid. His toothache disappeared, and he took this as a heavenly sign to proceed with his research. 8 days later he had completed his essay and, to publicize the results, proposed a contest. Pascal proposed 3 questions relating to the center of gravity, area and volume of the cycloid, with the winner or winners to receive prizes of 20 and 40 Spanish doubloons. Pascal, Gilles de Roberval and Pierre de Carcavie were the judges, and neither of the 2 submissions, by John Wallis and Antoine de Lalaveria, were judged to be adequate. 24. While the contest was ongoing, Christopher Wren sent Pascal a proposal for a proof of the rectification of the cycloid. Roberval claimed promptly that he had known of the proof for years. Wallis published Wren's proof, crediting Wren, in Wallis's Tractus Duo, giving Wren priority for the first published proof. Physics. Pascal contributed to several fields in physics, most notably the fields of fluid mechanics and pressure. In honor of his scientific contributions, the name Pascal has been given to the psi unit of pressure and Pascal's law, an important principle of hydrostatics. He introduced a primitive form of roulette and the roulette wheel in his search for a perpetual motion machine. 25. Fluid dynamics. His work in the fields of hydrodynamics and hydrostatics centered on the principles of hydraulic fluids. His inventions include the hydraulic press, using hydraulic pressure to multiply force, and the syringe. He proved that hydrostatic pressure depends not on the weight of the fluid but on the elevation difference. He demonstrated this principle by attaching a thin tube to a barrel full of water and filling the tube with water up to the level of the 3rd floor of a building. This caused the barrel to leak, in what became known as Pascal's barrel experiment. Vacuum. An illustration of the apocryphal Pascal's barrel experiment by 1647. Pascal had learned of Evangelista Torricelli's experimentation with barometers. Having replicated an experiment that involved placing a tube filled with mercury upside down in a bowl of mercury, Pascal questioned what force kept some mercury in the tube and what filled the space above the mercury in the tube. At the time, most scientists including Descartes believed in a plenum, i.e. some invisible matter filled all of space, rather than a vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum. This was based on the Aristotelian notion that everything in motion was a substance moved by another substance. 26. Furthermore, light passed through a glass tube, suggesting a substance such as ether rather than vacuum filled the space. Puy de Dôme. Following more experimentation in this vein, in 1647 Pascal produced Expériences nouvelles touchant la vie, new experiments with the vacuum, which detailed basic rules describing to what degree various liquids could be supported by air pressure. It also provided reasons why it was indeed a vacuum above the column of liquid in a barometer tube. This work was followed by Récit de la grande expérience de l'équilibre des liqueurs, account of the great experiment on equilibrium in liquids, published in 1648. The Torricellian vacuum found that air pressure is equal to the weight of 30 inches of mercury. If air has a finite weight, Earth's atmosphere must have a maximum height. Pascal reasoned that if true, air pressure on a high mountain must be less than at a lower altitude. He lived near the Puy de Dôme mountain, 4,790 feet, 1,460 m, tall, but his health was poor so could not climb it. 27. On the 19th of September, 1648, after many months of Pascal's friendly but insistent prodding, Florent Perrier, husband of Pascal's elder sister Gilbert, was finally able to carry out the fact-finding mission vital to Pascal's theory. The account, written by Perrier, reads: the weather was chancy last Saturday, but, around 5 o'clock that morning, the Puy de Dôme was visible, so I decided to give it a try. Several important people of the city of Clermont had asked me to let them know when I would make the ascent. I was delighted to have them with me in this great work. At 8 o'clock we met in the gardens of the Minim Fathers, which has the lowest elevation in town. First I poured 16 pounds of quicksilver into a vessel, then took several glass tubes, each 4 feet long and hermetically sealed at one end and opened at the other, then placed them in the vessel of quicksilver I found. The quicksilver stood at 26 312 lines above the quicksilver in the vessel. I repeated the experiment 2 more times while standing in the same spot. They produced the same result each time. I attached one of the tubes to the vessel and marked the height of the quicksilver and asked Father Chaston, one of the Minim brothers, to watch if any changes should occur through the day. Taking the other tube and a portion of the quicksilver, I walked to the top of Puy de Dôme, about 500 fathoms higher than the monastery, where upon experiment, found that the quicksilver reached a height of only 23 2 lines. I repeated the experiment 5 times with care, each at different points on the summit, found the same height of quicksilver, in each case. 28. Pascal replicated the experiment in Paris by carrying a barometer up to the top of the bell tower at the Church of Saint Jacques de la Boucherie, a height of about 50 meters. The mercury dropped 2 lines. In a reply to the Plenist St. Noel, Pascal wrote, echoing contemporary notions of science and falsifiability, in order to show that a hypothesis is evident, it does not suffice that all the phenomena follow from it. Instead, if it leads to something contrary to a single one of the phenomena, that suffices to establish its falsity. 29. Blaise Pascal chairs are given to outstanding international scientists to conduct their research in the Ile-de-France region. 30. Adult life, religion, literature, and philosophy. Religious conversion. Portrait of Pascal in the winter of 1646. Pascal's 58-year-old father broke his hip when he slipped and fell on an icy street of Rouen. Given the man's age and the state of medicine in the 17th century, a broken hip could be a very serious condition, perhaps even fatal. Rouen was home to two of the finest doctors in France, Deslandes and de la Boutellerie. The elder Pascal would not let anyone other than these men attend him. It was a good cause, for the old man survived and was able to walk again, 31. But treatment and rehabilitation took 3 months, during which time La Boutellerie and Deslandes had become regular visitors. Both men were followers of Jean Guilibert, proponent of a splinter group from Catholic teaching known as Jansenism. This still fairly small sect was making surprising inroads into the French Catholic community at that time. It espoused rigorous Augustinism. Blaise spoke with the doctors frequently, and after their successful treatment of his father, borrowed from them works by Jansenist authors. In this period, Pascal experienced a sort of first conversion and began to write on theological subjects in the course of the following year. Pascal fell away from this initial religious engagement and experienced a few years of what some biographers have called his worldly period, 1648-54. His father died in 1651 and left his inheritance to Pascal and his sister Jacqueline, for whom Pascal acted as conservator. Jacqueline announced that she would soon become a postulant in the Jansenist convent of Port Royal. Pascal was deeply affected and very sad, not because of her choice, but because of his chronic poor health. He needed her just as she had needed him. Suddenly there was war in the Pascal household. Blaise pleaded with Jacqueline not to leave, but she was adamant. He commanded her to stay, but that didn't work, either. At the heart of this was Blaise's fear of abandonment. If Jacqueline entered Port Royal, she would have to leave her inheritance behind, but nothing would change her mind. 32. By the end of October in 1651, a truce had been reached between brother and sister. In return for a healthy annual stipend, Jacqueline signed over her part of the inheritance to her brother. Gilbert had already been given her inheritance in the form of a dowry. In early January, Jacqueline left for Port Royal. On that day, according to Gilbert concerning her brother, he retired very sadly to his rooms without seeing Jacqueline, who was waiting in the little parlor, 33. In early June, 1653, after what must have seemed like endless barging from Jacqueline, Pascal formally signed over the whole of his sister's inheritance to Port Royal, which, to him, had begun to smell like a cult. 34. With 2/3 of his father's estate now gone, the 29-year-old Pascal was now consigned to genteel poverty. For a while, Pascal pursued the life of a bachelor. During visits to his sister at Port Royal in 1654, he displayed contempt for affairs of the world but was not drawn to God. 35. The Memorial. On the 23rd of November, 1654, between 10:30 and 12:30 at night, Pascal had an intense religious experience and immediately wrote a brief note to himself which began, "Fire. God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, not of the philosophers and the scholars," and concluded by quoting Psalm 119:16, "I will not forget thy word. Amen." He seems to have carefully sewn this document into his coat and always transferred it when he changed clothes. A servant discovered it only by chance after his death. 36. This piece is now known as the Memorial. The story of a carriage accident as having led to the experience he described in the Memorial is disputed by some scholars. 37. His belief and religious commitment are vitalized. Pascal visited the older of two convents at Port Royal for a 2-week retreat in January 1655. For the next 4 years, he regularly traveled between Port Royal and Paris. It was at this point, immediately after his conversion, when he began writing his first major literary work on religion, The provincial letters. Literature. Pascal in literature. Pascal is regarded as one of the most important authors of the French classical period and is read today as one of the greatest masters of French prose. His use of satire and wit influenced later polemicists. The provincial letters. Beginning in 1656-57, Pascal published his memorable attack on casuistry, a popular ethical method used by Catholic thinkers in the early modern period, especially the Jesuits, and in particular Antonio Escobar. Pascal denounced casuistry as the mere use of complex reasoning to justify moral laxity and all sorts of sins. The 18-letter series was published between 1656 and 1657 under the pseudonym Louis de Montaut and incensed Louis XIV. The king ordered that the book be shredded and burnt in 1660. In 1661, in the midst of the formulary controversy, the Jansenist school at Port-Royal was condemned and closed down. Those involved with the school had to sign a 1656 papal bull condemning the teachings of Jansen as heretical. The final letter from Pascal, in 1657, had defied Alexander VII himself. Even Pope Alexander, while publicly opposing them, nonetheless was persuaded by Pascal's arguments. Aside from their religious influence, the provincial letters were popular as a literary work. Pascal's use of humor, mockery, and vicious satire in his arguments made the letters ripe for public consumption, and influenced the prose of later French writers like Voltaire and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. It is in the provincial letters that Pascal made his oft-quoted apology for writing a long letter, as he had not had time to write a shorter one. From Letter 16, as translated by Thomas M. Cry. Reverend Fathers, my letters were not wont either to be so prolix, or to follow so closely on one another. Want of time must plead me excuse for both of these faults. The present letter is a very long one, simply because I had no leisure to make it shorter. Charles Perrault wrote of the letters, everything is their purity of language, nobility of thought, solidity in reasoning, finesse in raillery, and throughout an agreement not to be found anywhere else. 38. Philosophy. Pascal is arguably best known as a philosopher, considered by some the second greatest French mind behind René Descartes. He was a dualist following Descartes. 39. However, he is also remembered for his opposition to both the rationalism of the likes of Descartes and simultaneous opposition to the main countervailing epistemology, empiricism, preferring fideism. He cared above all about the philosophy of religion. Pascalian theology has grown out of his perspective that humans are, according to Wood, born into a duplicitous world that shapes us into duplicitous subjects, and so we find it easy to reject God continually and deceive ourselves about our own sinfulness. 40. Philosophy of mathematics. Pascal's major contribution to the philosophy of mathematics came with his De l'Esprit géométrique, of geometrical spirit, originally written as a preface to a geometry textbook for one of the famous Petites Écoles de Port-Royal, Little Schools of Port-Royal. The work was unpublished until over a century after his death. Here, Pascal looked into the issue of discovering truths, arguing that the ideal of such a method would be to found all propositions on already established truths. At the same time, however, he claimed this was impossible because such established truths would require other truths to back them up. First principles therefore cannot be reached. Based on this, Pascal argued that the procedure used in geometry was as perfect as possible, with certain principles assumed and other propositions developed from them. Nevertheless, there was no way to know the assumed principles to be true. Pascal also used de l'esprit géométrique to develop a theory of definition. He distinguished between definitions which are conventional labels defined by the writer and definitions which are within the language and understood by everyone because they naturally designate their referent. The second type would be characteristic of the philosophy of essentialism. Pascal claimed that only definitions